Marcus drove slowly along the wide road as the city lights reflected softly on his windshield. It had been a long day, and his shoulders felt heavy from hours of quiet responsibility. He worked for the county and carried his duty with calm pride, but tonight he wanted nothing more than rest. The streets were nearly empty, and the night felt peaceful around him. His car moved smoothly as he followed every rule on the road. Marcus had learned early in life that careful choices mattered. He kept both hands steady on the wheel and his thoughts focused on home. A warm meal and silence waited for him there. Suddenly bright lights flashed behind him and filled his mirrors with red and blue color. Marcus noticed them immediately and felt his chest tighten just a little. He slowed down at once and guided his car to the side of the road. The engine turned off, and the world became very quiet. He placed both hands clearly on the steering wheel and waited. This was not his first stop, and he knew how these moments could change quickly. Marcus stayed calm, breathing evenly as he looked straight ahead. The flashing lights continued to pulse against the dark pavement. 2 officers stepped out of their patrol car and walked toward him. Their boots struck the ground with sharp sounds that echoed in the still air. One officer walked directly to the driver window while the other stayed back. Their faces showed no warmth, only control and caution. The officer at the window asked for license and registration. Marcus nodded slowly and spoke in a steady voice. He told the officer where the documents were before reaching for them. Every movement he made was slow and clear. The officer watched closely as Marcus handed over the papers. The second officer leaned forward slightly, studying Marcus through the open window. There was a silence that felt longer than it needed to be. Marcus kept his eyes forward and his posture calm. The officer asked where Marcus was coming from. Marcus answered that he was coming from work. The officer asked what kind of work it was. Marcus paused briefly before answering honestly. He said he worked for the county and helped keep people safe. The officers exchanged a quick look that Marcus noticed right away. Their tone shifted slightly, becoming sharper and more questioning. The air between them felt tense and uneasy. The officer asked Marcus to step out of the car. Marcus agreed and moved carefully as he opened the door. He stepped out slowly and stood beside the car as instructed. The night air felt cool against his skin. The second officer walked around the car with a flashlight. The beam of light moved across the seats and the back window. There was nothing unusual inside the vehicle. Marcus stood still and waited. The first officer looked again at the license in his hand. He read the name silently at first. Then he read it again more carefully. His eyebrows pulled together in confusion. The officer asked Marcus to confirm his name. Marcus did so without hesitation. The officer looked down again at the card. Something on it had caught his attention. The streetlights revealed a change in the officer's face. His confident posture softened slightly. He adjusted his grip on the license and took a closer look. His voice became quieter when he spoke again. He asked Marcus if the information on the license was current. Marcus said it was accurate and up to date. The officer swallowed and shifted his weight. The second officer noticed the change and walked closer. They both looked at the license now. The second officer leaned in and read the text slowly. His eyes widened just a little. A brief silence fell between them. The confidence they had earlier was no longer there. The flashing lights still moved across the road, but the mood had changed. The officers stood still, uncertain of what to say next. Marcus remained calm and quiet. He had not raised his voice or shown frustration. He had followed every instruction without complaint. He understood how moments like this could turn quickly. Experience had taught him patience. The first officer cleared his throat and spoke again. His tone was different now, less sharp and more careful. He asked Marcus to wait while they checked something. Marcus nodded and said nothing. As the officers walked back toward their patrol car, Marcus stood alone by his vehicle. He looked up at the night sky and took a slow breath. The stars were faint but steady above him. He felt grounded in who he was and what he represented. Inside the patrol car, the officers spoke in low voices. They looked back at Marcus more than once. Their movements were tense and uncertain. The situation was no longer in their control. Marcus waited quietly, knowing that the truth was already written on that small card. What had started as a simple drive home was turning into something much larger. The road around them remained silent, and the night held its breath as the next moment approached. The officers stayed inside their patrol car longer than before, and the silence stretched across the road. Marcus stood beside his car with steady posture and calm eyes. He kept his hands visible and his breathing slow. He knew patience was often the strongest answer. Inside the patrol car, the first officer tapped the steering wheel again and again. The second officer read the information on the screen with growing concern. They spoke in low voices and avoided looking at each other. What they saw did not match what they expected. The name on the license was real and verified. The position listed was current and official. The badge number connected to the county database without delay. There was no mistake left to question. The second officer leaned back in his seat and sighed. His confidence from earlier was gone. He realized their approach had been wrong from the start. That realization made his stomach feel heavy. The first officer glanced at Marcus through the windshield. He saw a man standing quietly with dignity and restraint. There was no anger in Marcus's face. There was only calm and awareness. They stepped out of the patrol car again, but this time their steps were slower. The sharp edge in their movements had faded. Their shoulders were lower and their voices softer. The road felt different now. The first officer walked up to Marcus and cleared his throat. He held the license in both hands carefully. He spoke with a tone that tried to sound respectful. He said there had been a misunderstanding. Marcus listened without interrupting. He kept his eyes steady and his expression neutral. He had heard that word before many times. It never felt as small as people tried to make it sound. The officer explained they were checking records for safety reasons. He said the stop was routine. His words felt practiced and rushed. Marcus could hear the unease behind them. The second officer stood a few steps back and avoided eye contact. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. His earlier confidence had disappeared completely. Silence followed the explanation. Marcus finally spoke, and his voice was calm and clear. He said he understood procedures very well. He said respect mattered during every stop. His words were simple but firm. The officers nodded quickly. They agreed and apologized for the inconvenience. The apology sounded careful and restrained. It did not erase what had already happened. Marcus accepted the license back without comment. He did not raise his voice or show frustration. He knew moments like this were larger than one night. They carried weight beyond the road. The first officer asked if Marcus needed anything before leaving. Marcus said no and thanked them for returning his documents. His politeness remained steady. It reflected his discipline. As the officers turned away, Marcus felt the tension finally ease. His shoulders relaxed slightly. The quiet night returned little by little. The flashing lights no longer felt threatening. The patrol car lights turned off and darkness settled again. The officers drove away without another word. Their car disappeared down the road. The silence felt heavier than before. Marcus stood still for a moment beside his car. He looked down the empty road and took a deep breath. He allowed himself one moment of reflection. Then he opened the car door. He sat in the driver's seat and closed the door gently. His hands rested on the steering wheel once more. The familiar position brought comfort. He started the engine slowly. As he pulled back onto the road, his thoughts moved inward. He thought about the badge he carried every day. He thought about the trust that came with it. He thought about how easily trust could be shaken. Marcus had chosen his career to protect others. He believed in fairness and responsibility. He believed in doing the right thing even when it was hard. Moments like this tested that belief. The road ahead was open and quiet. Streetlights passed one by one. The city slept unaware of what had just happened. Life continued as usual. Marcus drove carefully and kept his speed steady. He replayed the stop in his mind without anger. He focused on what it represented instead. It was a reminder of why his role mattered. He knew there were people watching his actions every day. Some looked for mistakes while others looked for hope. He carried both expectations with him. That weight never left. As he neared his neighborhood, the tension fully faded. The familiar streets brought a sense of grounding. Trees lined the road and houses sat quietly. Home was close now. Marcus parked his car and turned off the engine. He sat there for a moment before getting out. He placed his hand on the steering wheel gently. He reminded himself of his purpose. The night air felt calmer as he stepped outside. The stars above looked steady and distant. Marcus walked toward his door with quiet strength. The road behind him returned to silence. What had happened would stay with him. It would shape his thoughts and his choices. But it would not define his character. He would continue forward with resolve. Morning arrived quietly as sunlight touched the small house where Marcus lived. He woke early as he always did and sat on the edge of his bed in silence. The events from the night before rested in his mind like a heavy stone. He did not feel anger, but he felt responsibility. Marcus believed reflection was as important as action. He prepared a simple breakfast and moved through his routine with care. Every movement felt steady and controlled. Calm helped him think clearly. As he drank his coffee, he looked out the window at the quiet street. Neighbors walked past unaware of what he carried inside. Life around him moved forward as usual. Marcus understood that many stories stayed unseen. Later that morning, Marcus arrived at the county office. The building stood tall and familiar. It represented duty and structure. He walked inside with steady steps. People greeted him with nods and quiet words. Some knew his role while others only knew his face. Marcus returned each greeting politely. Respect mattered to him in every space. He changed into his uniform and checked his equipment. The badge felt solid in his hand. It symbolized trust and responsibility. He never took it lightly. As the day progressed, Marcus joined a morning briefing. Several deputies gathered around a long table. Their conversations filled the room with routine updates. Marcus listened closely. The supervisor spoke about recent patrol reports. He mentioned the importance of calm judgment during stops. Marcus noticed the timing of those words. He wondered if the night before had already reached the office. After the briefing, Marcus was asked to stay behind. The supervisor closed the door gently. His expression was serious but not unkind. He asked Marcus how his night had been. Marcus took a slow breath before answering. He spoke honestly and clearly about the stop. He did not exaggerate or accuse. He simply explained what happened. The supervisor listened carefully without interruption. His face showed concern as Marcus spoke. He nodded slowly at several points. The room felt heavy with understanding. When Marcus finished, the supervisor thanked him. He said the situation would be reviewed properly. He assured Marcus that fairness mattered. His words carried weight. Marcus left the office feeling both lighter and thoughtful. Speaking the truth had brought some relief. But he knew change required more than words. It required consistency. The rest of the day passed with regular duties. Marcus responded to calls and helped residents. He spoke kindly and listened patiently. Service remained his focus. At one stop, he helped an older man fix a broken fence. At another, he calmed a worried mother. Small actions mattered deeply to Marcus. They reminded him why he chose this path. Throughout the day, his mind returned to the night stop. He thought about the officers and their reactions. He wondered what they felt afterward. He hoped reflection reached them too. During a break, Marcus sat alone outside the building. The sun warmed the ground beneath him. He closed his eyes briefly and breathed deeply. Balance came from moments like this. Marcus believed leadership showed in quiet choices. He believed fairness must be practiced, not spoken. His role allowed him to influence that culture. That responsibility guided him. As the afternoon ended, Marcus prepared to head home. The office slowly emptied around him. He placed his badge back into its case. Another day of service was complete. Outside, the sky began to change colors. Soft light painted the horizon. Marcus walked to his car with steady steps. He felt tired but grounded. The drive home felt different than the night before. The road no longer carried tension. He followed the same streets calmly. Music played softly in the background. At a stoplight, Marcus noticed another patrol car nearby. For a brief moment his chest tightened. Then he reminded himself of the present. The light turned green and the feeling passed. When Marcus reached home, he parked and stepped out. The quiet of the neighborhood welcomed him. He stood for a moment and looked around. Peace returned slowly. Inside his home, Marcus sat down and removed his jacket. He allowed himself time to rest. The long day settled into his body. Reflection followed naturally. Marcus knew the road ahead would not always be easy. Moments like the stop tested patience and resolve. But they also strengthened purpose. He accepted that truth. He believed that dignity could shift spaces. He believed calm could challenge fear. He believed example mattered more than argument. Those beliefs shaped his path. As night approached, Marcus prepared for rest. The house grew quiet around him. He lay down with a steady heart. Tomorrow would bring new responsibility. The experience had not weakened him. It had sharpened his understanding. Marcus remained committed to fairness and service. His journey was far from over. The next week began with steady work and quiet determination for Marcus. He arrived at the office early and reviewed reports with careful attention. The memory of the night stop stayed with him but no longer weighed him down. It had become a lesson instead of a burden. Word of the incident moved through the department slowly and carefully. There were meetings focused on conduct and decision-making. Marcus did not seek attention or recognition. He focused on listening and contributing when needed. During one session, Marcus was asked to speak about his experience. He stood calmly and chose his words with care. He spoke about respect and patience. He spoke about the impact of first impressions. The room was quiet as he talked. Several officers listened with serious expressions. Some shifted in their seats thoughtfully. The atmosphere felt different from before. Marcus did not point fingers or raise blame. He spoke from his own perspective only. His calm tone carried strength. The message reached deeper because of that. After the meeting, several officers approached him privately. They thanked him for sharing openly. Some admitted they had never considered moments like that from his view. Those conversations mattered. Over the following days, Marcus noticed subtle changes. Interactions during patrols felt more respectful. Questions were asked more thoughtfully. Small shifts began to appear. Marcus understood change happened slowly. He knew one story could not fix everything, but it could open doors. And open minds could lead to progress. One evening, Marcus joined a community meeting at a local center. Residents gathered to share concerns and ideas. Marcus listened closely and responded with honesty. Trust grew through dialogue. An older woman thanked Marcus for being present. She said seeing fairness gave her hope. Marcus smiled gently at her words. Moments like that fueled his resolve. Later that night, Marcus drove home under calm skies. The road felt familiar and peaceful. He thought about how far the week had taken him. Growth had come from discomfort. As he parked his car, Marcus noticed the quiet around him. Streetlights glowed softly. The world felt steady again. He stepped out with a grounded spirit. Inside his home, Marcus sat at the table and reflected. He thought about responsibility and example. He thought about the future of service. Purpose guided his thoughts. Marcus believed leadership meant standing firm with kindness. He believed fairness must be lived daily. The night stop had tested those beliefs. They had remained strong. As time passed, the incident became part of a larger conversation. Training programs were updated. Awareness increased within the department. Marcus observed progress with quiet satisfaction. He never sought praise or attention. His reward was seeing positive change. He continued his duties with the same discipline. Service stayed at the center of his work. One afternoon, Marcus crossed paths with one of the officers from that night. Their meeting was brief but respectful. There was no tension in the exchange. Time and reflection had softened the moment. Marcus nodded politely and moved on. He carried no resentment. Growth mattered more than blame. The past no longer controlled the present. That evening, Marcus stood outside and watched the sunset. The sky changed colors slowly. He felt calm and resolved. The journey had strengthened him. Marcus knew challenges would continue to appear. But he also knew how to face them. Patience and integrity would guide his steps. His purpose remained clear. As night settled, Marcus prepared for rest. The house grew quiet around him. He lay down with a steady heart. Confidence replaced doubt. The road ahead was still long. But Marcus was ready to walk it. With calm strength and clear values, his story continued forward.